It's almost Alex Jones plays a Nostradamus role when it comes to the militarization of the police and SWAT teams, gang units.
Under the docks, yeah, under the docks. Buried deep, but we're breaking the locks. Footage got clipped, they erased all the shots. Stay connected dots. Under the docks, under the docks, yeah, under the docks. Yeah, under the docks.
This is Under the Docks. I'm Sean Chris.
And I guess I'm paranoid American yet again.
Police State 2000, a 1999 film directed by Alex Jones and narrated by Alex Jones. This is a great introduction for everybody to who Alex Jones is. His character, his demeanor, how he speaks, his guerrilla journalism, it's pretty much, to me, the essence of what documentary conspiracy films are now. It was the catalyst of all of this. He was on the front lines, really pushing this before the internet was really, really big. And he's one of the first huge internet stars we have. And in this, he analyzes what civil liberties are being taken away, the police and SWAT teams kind of amping up as military with equipment and vehicles, such and such. I think this one is going to be right up our alley.
I would argue that this is how Alex Jones was and not is, because there's a stark difference watching this, right? This was actually, I think, originally recorded in 98. It came out in around 2000, but it was 98. And Alex Jones in 2025, you can see it's an entirely different person in some ways.
Yeah, totally. Not just how he looks, but the way he's talking, and his viewpoints have changed quite a bit.
Well, and I think this is probably a great intro to someone that's never seen Alex Jones, instead of going right to whatever the YouTube clips are, whatever the memes are about gay frogs and all of that. This is like the most OG version of him, unless you get into his public access station where he was kind of finding his footing. But this one in particular, and I think that this might have even been the first Alex Jones documentary I'd ever seen. This one right here, Police State 2000.
And in the film, he argues that we're heading toward totalitarianism that's fueled by government surveillance, media control, and grandly slowly taking away several liberties.
Yeah, that's kind of just crazy wackadoo conspiracy talk. None of that would ever happen.
Plotting the course. That he kind of paints a picture of a dystopian government takeover, like I said earlier, totalitarianism, and how the police force is actually changing in America. And he makes some pretty crazy claims. And one of the claims is the psychological and actual military tactical exercises. He speaks about Delta Force conducting various military exercises, including anti-terrorism drills in Kingsville, Texas, Oakland, California, Alice, Texas, to name a few. He also speaks about a couple that were in Maryland as well. And he goes through, not only, I want to say it's not just a claim, he actually shows footage. And this is where I go with the guerrilla journalism, where he actually has people out there with some big old 90s camcorders and actually getting footage of this.
Yeah, this one's a little bit different because it's not so much making claims, it's showing you the footage that he's getting, him and some amateur camera people, that he reminds you as you're watching it. And he's like, remember, this is some amateur camera, they don't know what they're doing. Like, this guy turned off the camera, he wasn't supposed to. But it's the claims are more about what we're seeing and what like the reason why it's happening. Not so much that it's happening, because clearly the footage shows that it's happening. He's got interviews with other police chiefs that are saying, "Oh yeah, they're trying to do that," or "They did it and I told them not to," or in some cases they're going along with it and they tell them, "Get the hell out of here."
Yeah, that was the interesting part, and great how he kind of like got to actually not just the footage, but like you said, he got his way into a lot of places, right? It's the beginning of where we see him squirm his way into places maybe he shouldn't be, and his charismatic way of going around and asking questions in kind of like a blunt way, but kind of pretending to be respectful, I guess.
Tell when those conflicts are about to happen too, because he'll be asking questions and then he'll ask sort of a tough question, kind of like, "Hey, are you getting any government funding for participating in this?" And then you'll see the demeanor change of whoever he's talking to, and the very first question's usually like, "Who are you with? Where are you from?" And then you already know that the person that he's talking to has either clammed up already or is becoming antagonistic. They're gonna the next few words are gonna be like, "Sir, get out of the building."
Now I'll go with the second claim. What I came up with was public communication. A lot of these exercises weren't properly, and the public wasn't informed about them. Maybe loosely, or there was like a little briefing, or maybe the police chief and his fellow officers were aware of this. But in many of these exercises, the public was not made aware that Delta Force would be conducting anti-terrorism exercises, sometimes with actual gunfire and explosions and power outages. So the public is kind of left in this like weird state of what is going on. Like you call the police, like, "Hey man, there's automatic rifle fire in my backyard," or like, 20 yards away. And in many cases, they were also told they're not even allowed to leave their yards or they could be arrested.
Well, this is part of the craziest, I guess, not even a claim, but we see some man on the street style interviews, and one of those places that they're doing these exercises with Delta Force, black helicopters, flashbangs. They're showing the buildings afterward. The buildings are entirely scorched. All the windows have been smashed up, and within 24 hours, they're already hiring people to board it up and paint it and kind of eliminate any evidence that this ever occurred. But one of the places that they picked, and it seems most of them, would be in kind of remote areas that aren't already going to have a whole bunch of traffic, have a small little community. One of them was right across the street from a retirement home. And like you mentioned, they don't give you forewarning. They didn't go and say, "Oh, by the way, everyone, before you go out into the yard and do whatever you're going to do, play shuffleboard, there's going to be a Delta Force exercise where people are going to be rappelling down from helicopters and firing automatic weapons and throwing grenades." Like none of that really gets conveyed to the community. And then in fact, one of them mentioned, "Oh, we wouldn't want to do that because then we'd get an audience and people would be here." And he almost didn't say directly, he almost implied that, "Oh, well, then the press will show up." And it's kind of like, well, yeah, my guy, because this is sort of out of the ordinary. This is something that would affect you. And that part is wild only because you have to rewatch this as if you're in 1998 watching this. It's some of this, I'm watching it, I'm like, yeah, of course they do. Of course they wouldn't tell people they're doing an exercise, of course. But that's because this is all filmed pre 9/11, right? And we're living way post 9/11.
Yeah, and watching the film, you have to remind yourself that this is pre 9/11. So this now, like you said, it's like, "Oh yeah, that's how they are, man. That's the normalization." But this was 2 years, well, actually 3 years, because like you said, it was filmed in 1998, released in 1999, and also I think in 2000 it was re-released, kind of like on that borderline. Kind of like the Chronic 2000, right? Everybody was going with the 1999 stuff, call it 2000 at the end of it. That's kind of the feel of this. Another thing he brings up is the militarization of law enforcement, which he shows through weapons, hypersonic weapons for crowd control, for armored vehicles, tactical vests, tactical gear, and the funding coming from the federal government to each of these agencies and distributing all of this equipment to them.
Yeah, who doesn't want cool new toys? And this is just the military swooping in and saying, "Look, we got this surplus. And I get it. I understand. That was one of the things that blew my mind open in the military was how much money is just straight up wasted. But it's the same story as any other budgeting department you've ever come in contact with in your adult life, where if you don't spend all of this year's budget, then you get less budget next year. You got to show like, oh man, we need even more. Like we had to spend it all last year. We didn't have any left over because in a lot of those cases, this is the military saying, hell yeah, we need a couple extra Humvees. Hell yeah, we need a couple extra rocket launchers. And then they're looking around and it's collecting dust. So one of the things they can do is just donate it to these police departments. And in tandem with just donating equipment, they're like, oh, and let us show you how to use it. So now you literally have the militarization of police forces. And again, these weren't being conducted in Chicago or in Tampa or in like New York City, where a lot of people are going to see this happening. They're literally bringing these huge Humvees and these, weapons of war into small podunk towns and teaching these police how to use this stuff.
Yeah, and I have a good example of the government waste of like you're talking about. I'm sure plenty of people have, but my mom worked for the county in California, and one of the people, like the higher ups, was like, you know what, we want to save this money. Instead of using the whole million budget, we're going to save half of it because they wanted to make this like special center for kids or something along that lines. And then when they didn't, they were like, oh, if you don't spend that, then you don't get it. So the next following year, instead of $1 million budget, you get $500,000 budget. But they're like, but I was saving, and they're like, that's not how this works.
Yep. And that's exactly, I think everyone benefits from this except for the citizenry. And that's sort of the premise of that whole reason of what, like, why is it bad? Maybe people need to ask that question in 2025. Why is the militarization of police bad? Well, now we're kind of seeing it in 2025. There is, at least in the 90s, there was maybe the illusion that existed that you might have a local policeman, kind of like you'd have a local mailman and a local milkman and, like your guy, so that when you see him on the street, you know the officer's name, that you know your name, and it's not because you've been in trouble before. But we're so far beyond that. This is such a foreign concept to me. Like, I don't even know my mailman's name anymore because they just swap it around to whoever, I guess, gets stuck with that route. So this, again, it's prophetic in a way. He's like, America, if you're not careful, you're going to see this militarization. And again, if you're watching this for the first time in 2025, it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, there's no more Andy Griffith to slightly slap us on the wrist for getting a little too drunk at the bar and cooking us breakfast in the morning and getting us home. That those days are gone.
I got another one of the claims that kind of blends directly into that one is that this militarization of the police, it's there to condition everyone involved. And this one was like a little high level, but it's at the surface, make the surrounding area, the regular citizens, more normalized to this. So they don't freak out when it starts happening more and more. At the same time, they're normalizing the police themselves. The police, this is new to them too. And this is almost like the military, like, oh, no, this is normal. This is how you treat people. This is a humanitarian effort. And then you've also got the military, which this is a fairly new premise. And now the military guys, they're getting normalized. Like, oh, yeah, of course, we always train local police. And there's one part in particular where they interview a younger kid. And he's like, oh, yeah, they're phasing all the old people out. They're bringing in like this new crowd and we think different and we work differently. And I think that there was like a very subtle implication there that this Police State 2000 is all about retraining citizens and military and police all at the same time. Like it's actually happening from the 90s into like the early 2000s.
It's a restructuring of how we think of military and policing in general. And that's a great point too, because it also kind of comes to 2025 when we're talking about all these like, General Milley's, or 2024 when Biden was still, and they're like, hey, this communist mindset or this LGBTQ blah, blah, blah mindset into the military. This was kind of a reset. And it's almost seems like the way he talked about it, that every so often we have these little resets within the military and the police force to kind of change the public's perception.
I think that this movie did a lot of work for us because the claims it made are just prophecies that it foretold. Those are kind of the claims, right? The police are going to become militarized. Citizens are going to become a little bit numb to that militarization. And essentially, the last claim that it kind of makes is that when you involve kids in these role playing exercises, because there were some instances when they do inform the local area and they're saying like people sign up or they volunteer, whatever that means, but they said people volunteer so that the police will come into their house and interrogate them. And it sounds like doing mock weapon confiscation, and that some of them might even be role playing that they're resisting arrest, right? So then the police role play right back and they treat them like they're resisting arrest. And there's one part where they're talking about kids turning into the tattletale police. That was a direct quote from Alex Jones specifically, but that the kids were going to be used to come and tell in these role-playing sessions, come and tell us if you find someone hiding or if you know that someone's lying to us, like come and tell us. And that was part of that role-playing. Man, that part was really insidious to me, because that's another version of this new normalization where now you're expecting children, like underage children, to be doing some of the legwork for police or even the military.
And they even have B-roll of like a kid on a bike riding up to like the military guys in fatigues. Like, hey, like you could just, and as he's telling you this tattletale police, it really paints the picture perfect of what he's talking about. And you have to kind of imagine, if you're watching this documentary, or us talking about this documentary, that you're in 1999, because if you go for 2025, yeah, you're like, oh, that's obvious. Like, but in 1999, people were like, that's conspiratorial. This would never happen. Like, you got to kind of get yourself in that mode. Hidden treasures and overboard moments. I think the strength of this film, it's like historical context, as we're talking about, as it's almost Alex Jones plays a Nostradamus role when it comes to the militarization of the police and SWAT teams, gang units. Like, I know they were loosely based in the 90s, but in the late 90s and early 2000s, they really formulated what you see now of the militarization of police, where the SWAT teams have armored vehicles and they have the same tactics. They move into locations just the same way that the military would treat terrorists. And it's also a precursor to the domestic terrorists, right? I know we had Terry Nichols and Tim McVeigh and the Waco Boys and Ruby Hill, but those were all feeding into this huge moment of all these exercises. Of one claim they keep making is like, well, is this domestic or is this foreign? And then they're kind of like, kind of both, whatever we need. You know what I mean? They're talk to some soldiers, actually go to a Humvee, and there's 4 soldiers. They're kind of get some information out of them. The guy's like, yeah, I'm kind of training for both, whatever. And then one of the soldiers kind of steps in like, hey, we're not supposed to be talking about this.
Yeah, and he wasn't. I was surprised at how many people end up talking to Alex in this movie. And I guess that's one of the main hidden treasures for me, is that this is classic go up into the police station and then just ask questions and you catch them off guard. They're like, we're in the middle of a meeting here. It's like, I'm sorry, am I not in a public facility paid by taxpayer money? I'm here, I am the media. But this is, I think, the golden era of Alex Jones before it gets too weird, right? Before he starts like going off of any particular tangent. He's very serious in this movie. There's a few questions in which he's being a little bit provocative, but not in a smarmy smartass, or I'm going to fight you, or I'm calling you a globalist or a reptilian, or none of that. It's really just like, oh yeah, and no one has any problem at all with just forfeiting their civil liberties, and you don't think people are scared when there's explosions going off in the middle of the night, and you haven't told them about this. And just the fact that he's asking this directly to the military guys and directly to the police. And in one case, they have footage of him getting arrested and being loaded up in the back of the car. And then he's got footage of his cameraman getting arrested and loaded up in the back of the car, with Alex then saying in the VO that his cameraman ends up getting beaten in jail and tortured. They don't really expand on exactly what that means, but and they've got other footage where he's refusing to get his ID because they're acting this real ID. All this is here, right? Like, real ID's been here. He was right about that, but no one else is really getting arrested over it except for him. And to see him in this particular form, again, if you care at all what peak Alex Jones form looks like, this is the movie. This is a documentary that shows you him, I think, at the top of his game, for better and for worse, right? This is kind of peak form for him.
Yeah, I think this was peak journalistic Alex Jones. This
There
is
you go.
before he kind of gets into the character. I think that he really goes down. And to me, that's why I don't have a lot of overboard moments. I really liked how the film was. I know some people might not like the guerrilla style, but I liked how we got footage. I thought he was very persuasive. He pushed people around, but in a respectful way, and was able to get actual information. I think part of it was the times, because now everybody has a camera in your face. At that time, they're like, what is this? Some obscure little like PBS, small little radio network. It's nothing, right? They're probably like, we'll tell them whatever. It doesn't matter. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not like now where you're like, oh, this can go viral. We didn't even think about any kind of viral sensations or cult conspiracy type documentaries getting out there. It was just like, oh yeah, I'll talk to this random dude that has a camcorder. It's probably going to stay in his basement. No one's going to see any of this footage.
That's a really good point, actually, because on the other side of that, the reason why this maybe a lot of people had no idea this all had actually happened, and the slow progression on how we got to where we're at now, is because the media didn't really cover it. I mean, there are news articles about these being reported, but it really is sort of written from this weird, far removed objective standpoint where, citizens reported in this particular block at this time that military operations, reports of, explosions and fire. And that's pretty much it. And Alex Jones, what he does is he finds out about that through those objective news articles that don't really go into detail. And then he just starts knocking on doors and just talking to people like, hey, you live in this area. Do you remember hearing about this? And getting this kind of reporting that we never got. So again, this is just like a huge hidden treasure that no one else was covering this granular, this like street level versions of these stories. You might get it from a very high level where you're almost rereading the PR campaign that came directly from the military or from the police joint task force, as opposed to a curious journalist that just wants to know what's going on in like a local area.
Let's test the waters and go deep dive. For me, I kind of went into the Alabama exercise where the Green Berets and the Green Berets and the Rangers near Anniston Municipal Airport, where they had claims of troops parachuting in, mock battles. This is where the local residents were confused about explosions and troop movement, a planned power outage by Alabama Power that none of the residents were aware of, that they woke up in the middle of the night. And this is 9 p.m. at night, going to dinner. That's the kind of Alex Jones actually word for words, like, imagine you're 9 p.m. going to dinner, and then all of a sudden you hear explosions and gunfire. And to his credit, when I heard him say that, I'm like, yeah, that would freak me out. Like, I would go get all right, gonna go to the arsenal. Like, it's here. The commies are here. Like, you know what I mean? I would be stressing out, especially any of us conspiratorial people that already are ready for this. And like you said, too bad this was pre-globalist Alex Jones, because then for sure he'd be out there, guns ablazing. But there was a lot going into that, and he even like talks to some of the officials in that time, the police chief that were involved, and asking them, well, why was this? Oh, they weren't informed. And they even have a quote as they were saying, we didn't inform them about the power because we didn't think they needed to know.
But there was a really, really powerful moment in this one too, when he's interviewing, I think it was a police chief of San Antonio at the time, and the guy's telling him how not only did the police chief say, no, you're not doing this within San Antonio city limits. Like, I can't prevent you from doing it at the very edge of our jurisdiction. But if you're coming here and asking, I am saying no. And even after that happens, he mentioned that he starts getting pressured from civil groups, from other politicians, from other people in his sphere. And he's telling all of them, not only is it no now, but it's no with a prejudice, because I realize the reason you're asking this because the person I said no to the first time is now trying to go behind my back. This is like the kid that asks mom, and then, mom says no, and then goes and asks dad. And dad's like, no, I heard that your mom already said no, but they're not doing this, right? They're actually trying to push it. And then even after the police chief keeps saying, no, you're not going to conduct these black helicopter Delta operations in city limits, they just do it anyway. Like, they don't, like, the fact that they were even asking was almost of a courtesy. And the implication there is that they're also sort of training the police chief to just know, hey, next time we ask, it really means that we're telling, and then you can just do what you need to do about that.
And what holds up in this film is pretty much everything. Like I said that earlier, it's a Nostradamus conspiracy prophecy that kind of Alex Jones comes up with. I mean, maybe it seems obvious now, but there's surveillance cameras everywhere, and the police watching you, and having units, and having anti terrorist movements, and talking about these exercises. This is now commonplace that we've probably seen tons of times, and we see military vehicles just roaming the streets and nobody even bats an eye. It's like normal. And we're like, oh yeah, there's cameras everywhere. Like even when I see people nowadays, they're like complaining about a camera in their face at Walmart, like, hey man, you can't put a camera in my face. But they never complain about the CCTV TV cameras that are all over in the Walmart, outside the Walmart, a couple blocks up from the Walmart. Nobody even cares that they're constantly being surveilled.
And if you watch enough cop shows, like real cop shows, like I do, you realize how much police rely on those civilian cameras. Like that camera outside that Walmart probably does more cop work than any cop on the force, right? Like that thing is working overtime all the time. And there was one part in particular in this documentary where he points up at a traffic camera and he's like, look, they put these in here to say that it was to track, travel, or in this case, I think it was the airport. They were just trying to keep an eye on the airport. It's not like we had cameras all over the highways at that point. But he notes, look, the camera's actually pointing towards this community. It's pointing towards where people live, and it's not pointing towards the airport in this point. And yeah, that did seem to stick out in 1998. But in 2025, man, every single thing that he tries to warn, and I also, I don't feel like he's necessarily like Nostradamus in a way, but also he's so late to the party. Like he's the first one there, but he's so late to the party that even him raising this alarm, it was so far advanced that there, like Police State 2000, even if you released this in like 1990, unless the next 10 years somehow it got some kind of viral traction and people went and protested about it and wrote their congressman, even then it probably wouldn't have made a dent in the actual events that, and again, man, imagine this is pre 9/11. So as soon as 9/11 happens, every single thing in this movie you can watch now and just be like, yeah, no duh.
And they talk about these exercises really started in the 60s and 70s after a lot of the protest movements for Vietnam and the different movements at the time, like the women's rebellion, the desegregation, different things of that nature, which they've been doing these exercises. And then precursor to all of this, like you said, the pre 9/11, which you've already discussed, the Oklahoma City bombing and Waco, this now gave you the domestic terrorist. And I think, like you said, you would have to probably start maybe in the 70s and 80s, like, but to get at that many people on board, I think this was like, he predicted kind of the obvious, but there's nothing you can really do about it.
Yeah, this is his Chicken Little movie, 100%, man.
Ripples and waves. I mean, this movie had to inspire so many different people. I think like you have what we have as a quote unquote community in the conspiratorial world, because this predates really like the internet movements. There's been forums, I know, and there was like certain little websites that had some of this information, but it was somebody that's actually there on public access that broke through to the mainstream, and this movie actually resonated with people. And you see us all talking about this influence a loose change, right? Like even though the 9/11 thing that happened, this movie influenced like zeitgeist, these kind of films that where their totalitarianism involved in what the governments take over, and that how the government has too much control. There would be no globalist agenda. This is where we first started talking about like, whoa, the federal government trying to really fund everything. I really think this, and Alex Jones, to his credit, whether you love him or hate him, is super influential to what all of us have learned.
I think the biggest ripples and waves here is just that this movie establishes credibility for Alex Jones. More so than almost any other thing that he put out, this Police State series, which is a trilogy, and this is the very first in this 3-part trilogy. But again, it is the least sarcastic, the least demon goblin, interdimensional, being type talk. This is very specific. It's very serious. The claims, again, are more like dialogue about trying to explain the context of the footage and the actual information that you're seeing, like all of that being objective. So, and this one also, you don't get Alex Jones in 2025, or even in the next documentary they're going to watch in Bohemian Grove. You don't get those Alex Jones without this one existing first. And there's an interview with one guy that I think summarizes it really well, that the public access community in Austin was one of the oldest ones. It was one of the oldest forms of everyone being able to share this public access across the nation. And that Alex Jones, he serves better or worse, again, as an example of how far you can go starting with a regular old public access show, which doesn't really exist anymore. Now public access is you just start your own YouTube channel, your own blog. But back then, public access was the pipe dream, is that somehow you went from that to, I guess, Hollywood, or just getting into more serious, like an actual news station. And in this case, I mean, the ripples and waves are impossible to sort of understate here. He turned it into a conglomerate, like a global media conglomerate. He turned into the very thing that he basically seemed like he was the antithesis of originally.
It's that time, my friend. Sink or swim?
I'm conflicted, man. I have to say swim, but it's a close call. So let me just clarify this. If you are looking to watch a documentary and learn something new in 2025, maybe it's a sink. Maybe this is something that you can just take our word for it and you don't have to rewatch it. But if you can put yourself into the mentality of a pre-9/11 1998 and imagine you're watching all this when people were going to say that's crazy, that wouldn't happen, these are just these weird isolated military events, in that case, it's absolutely a swim. It's absolutely worth your time. And again, I'll say that this is probably the most credible, with warts and all, with all of the sort of unprofessional editing. They reshow a few different clips like 2 or 3 times. I was like, did I accidentally rewind this? No, I think that was just repetition to kind of make a point. They're trying to drive home a certain idea, but it has a lot of those warts and bumps in it. All that considered, man, this is probably like the best Alex Jones documentary that you're going to get if you care about objectivity.
I'm going to go with swim myself. And really just because of what you said, I really like to see Alex Jones, especially since this is kind of my first introduction to him when I watched Police State, probably 2001, 2002, somewhere around that time. And that's the Alex Jones where you're like, wow, man, this guy's informative. He's right there. He's a real journalist and an investigative journalist. And I think it shows something that people have kind of lost with Alex Jones now that he became a character. You get to see the hard work he puts in and being on the ground and being a kind of an antagonist journalist where he's pushing like, hey, when one of my favorite scenes is in the beginning when they're going to the stop of where they're doing the traffic stop, and maybe it's a DUI checkpoint. That's what I'm guessing. It's some kind of police checkpoint. And he's kind of like, hey, what are we doing over here? And he's just like harassing them, kind of like, hey man, who can I talk to? And like, he's just talking crap. And he's like, oh man, these Nazis. And he keeps making these terms, and he does it later too when he shows like the tactical vest. This is when you start seeing his comedic presence that is kind of maybe just part of his personality, but they show the tactical gear and he holds the helmet and he's like, the Nazis had something like this. Like, I don't think that was the quote, but he says like, oh, the Germany keeps talking about, oh, we're in 1938. And I thought it was interesting because of now how the pendulum have swung the other way. They would be calling him a Nazi when now it's just the ironicness of how life works out is he was claiming everything of this totalitarian regime and calling people Nazis. And now he's referred to as a Nazi, but this is definitely a swim for me.
Yeah, that one's kind of funny because you can tell that that's also when he realizes that there's no more ground he's going to get in a particular interview. And then he'll just drop something out there. And this is him kind of bursting at the seams a little bit where you can get a preview of what's to come, where he's, perfectly decent interview. They're kind of standoffish. They're not necessarily antagonistic, the police in this case. And then he'll say, man, this just kind of reminds you a little bit of, like Germany in like World War II, right? Just the way that all of this is coming together. And then you just see the cop just immediately clam up and then walk away. And now he's seen as this guy that's kind of egging them on. So you get a glimpse of what's to come on this one.
On the horizon. Up next is another cult conspiracy classic. This is Alex Jones month, so we got it. The only way you could do Alex Jones month, you can't just do Police State 2000. Got to go Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, I feel like out of all the movies that we could have picked from, this one had to be on the list, and it was actually pretty hard picking Police State 2000 over some of the other options that came later. But I do feel that it's really important that we cover a couple that are before the WWE character of Alex Jones comes out the gate. And these two, you see his DNA slowly forming in the Petri dish.
Well, I think it's about that time.
I need sleepy time right now. That nice place I go to, and I'm asleep.
See you guys. Peace.
Stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all the land and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
We're all American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all the land and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hate maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Matters not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.